For all the talk about Elon Musk, Ukraine, whether Zelensky's a dictator, Doge, USAID, and deportation flights, just sit back for a second. When was the last time you actually heard someone talk about paycheck-to-paycheck voters? The results of last year's election came down to those Americans, the 30% who live from one payday to the next. This election was about them, and they became the cornerstone of President Trump's victory.
People do view the economy from their own pocketbook.
The economy by the numbers is doing okay, but that's not my experience in day-to-day life.
Have the candidates focused enough on the inflation issue?
No, because they're busy caught up in the cult of personality that drives our political scene now.
I worry a lot about, the economy.
A lot of folks here live paycheck to paycheck, and when there's too much month at the end of the money, people vote with their wallet.
Legendary pollster, political analyst Frank Luntz is with us now. Frank, so great to have you. And I heard about this on our editorial call this morning. We were talking about this segment. And when your name came up, I said, Luntz was the guy who on air corrected me when I said working class. And you said, no, Leland, paycheck to paycheck voters. And there is a difference. So credit where credit is due to you for defining this and understanding this. Why don't we hear about them anymore?
Because they're not a sexy topic. The media likes to talk about women. They like to talk about Latinos or African Americans. They want to talk about something that can polarize. And the paycheck to paycheck voters, Democrat and Republican, it's young and old. It's someone who's first generation or 15th generation. They're not divisive and they're not divided, with the exception of that they're desperate for politicians to listen to them, to learn from them, and to make their lives easier on a day-to-day basis, which means lower taxes. It means lower prices. It means focusing on food and fuel, housing and healthcare. And it really requires an understanding, not just of the economy, but how the average person lives from the moment they wake up in the morning until the moment they go to sleep at night. Politicians don't always get it. The media doesn't always get it. But as a pollster, these are the people that I hear from every single day.
What are you hearing from them now?
That they are really happy that people who should not be here are being asked to leave. That they're really happy that Washington's being held responsible and accountable for wasteful Washington spending. That they want to see the government be more efficient, more effective, and more accountable. The only criticism that they have is they don't want the president to take his eye off the ball when it comes to how much their day-to-day life costs them. These are people who, when you say paycheck to paycheck, it means that their house is barely paid for. It means that they have nothing left over at the end of the week or end of the month. And they want to make sure that this administration is as focused now as they were during the election campaign. They believe in everything else, but they're wondering, what will tariffs do to prices? What will a focus on changing the way that Washington works, how will that impact them favorably in their wallets and in their pocketbooks?
It's always so great to have you on because you spend so much time talking with these folks. You have your focus groups, you go out, you find people, and are able to distill it down. But there is this other word, perhaps, for paycheck-to-paycheck voters. Not for all of them, but for a lot of them, which would be Medicaid recipients. These are people who are on the cusp there. And there now is a new boogeyman being created by Democrats that somehow Donald Trump is going to cut Medicaid benefits, who and how people qualify, etc. Here he is in the cabinet room after being asked about that.
Can you guarantee that Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security will not be touched?
Yeah, I mean, I have said it so many times, you shouldn't be asking me that question, okay? This will not be read my lips. It won't be read my lips anymore. We're not going to touch it. Now, we are going to look for fraud. I'm sure you're okay with that, like people that shouldn't be on, people that are illegal aliens and others.
Is that enough for those voters, Frank?
No, but nothing will be enough for them. And the reason why is that one health care crisis bankrupts them. And when I say bankrupt, it actually means they could lose their homes, they could lose their livelihoods. And so they're on the edge. And so they've heard this from politicians before, making promises that they assert, but they do not keep. And it's one of the reasons why Washington is so distrusted, why Congress has such a low approval rating, that the fact is the public does not believe that what they're being told is what actually happens. So the president and Congress are going to have to say this again and again. And frankly, they're going to have to show it in the actual legislation itself. And make no mistake, Donald Trump has a higher approval rating right now than he did at any time in his first administration. But, and this is a big but, some of the things that they have done over the last 2 or 3 weeks have tremendous support, but not the language, not how it's being communicated. The fact is the public does not want a chainsaw. People at CPAC, conservatives, want to take a chainsaw to government. These paycheck-to-paycheck voters, they're not ideological, they're not political, and they're not partisan. They simply want to survive. And so many of them voted for Donald Trump, who had traditionally voted Democrat in the past. They're the reason why Trump won this election. You're correct about that. But now they expect the president to deliver, and they want his focus on their livelihoods from the moment they wake up in the morning until the moment they go to sleep at night. And they want the politicians to keep their promises to make that day-to-day affordability, and that's the key word in this.
Look, and that takes time. Affordability takes time. To change prices and energy policy, everything else, that does take time. We've talked about Donald Trump. We've talked about Democrats. We've talked about Congress. We've talked about Republicans and conservatives. Haven't talked about Elon Musk. How does Elon Musk play with this group that doesn't want a chainsaw to government and may very well be government employees, working class voters, paycheck to paycheck voters? They very well may be benefits of some of the very programs that Musk wants to just blast through and deal with later.
That is, not only is that an accurate question, but you clearly understand it better than some people in Washington do. And my message to Elon Musk is they believe in the principles that he's articulated. They believe in the effort that he's doing, but they don't believe in the way that he's communicating it. And he's creating enemies that don't necessarily have to exist. It was the same thing in how he approached buying Twitter. They knew that Twitter wasn't working. They knew that it could be made more efficient and more effective. And they loved the fact that he was not going to censor speech. They appreciate it. They respect it. But in how he approaches some of these difficult decisions, someone needs to say to him that there's a way to do this to bring the American people together, to actually, instead of frightening people or doing it out of anger or resentment or frustration, you're doing it to protect the hardworking taxpayer. And that's the phrase that I would leave you in this segment. You talk about paycheck to paycheck voters. They also want to be seen as hardworking taxpayers, hardworking taxpayer families, small businesses, small business owners. They want to be seen as people, not as numbers.
I just wrote that down. I've learned when you say a phrase or people to pay attention to indeed pay attention to it. Frank, every time you're on, I'm reminded how we need to have you on more often because we always learn something. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah.